Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff.
Yeah, we are here to talk about fucking stuff, boy. Man.
All right. This Thursday night, the 10th of November. It's been 2 nights since Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. Words I had hoped never have to speak on this podcast.
Yeah. No.
Or in life. And, you know, we don't normally talk about politics on this show. We try to avoid that. As we've said before, it's hard not to this year. And so here's the game plan. I have heard from listeners, and I have heard from my own heart that I don't want to just ignore this on the air.
Yeah.
And I don't want our first episode back after this to just sound ignorant of it. In part because I think our hearts wouldn't quite be in it if we didn't get some of this off our chests.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So if you don't want to listen to the politics stuff, if you're a Trump voter and somehow listen to this podcast, which would be weird to me, but that's fine, go in peace. You can come back in episode 166.
Yeah.
That'll be out on Monday. We're going to probably record that also tonight, and in that episode we'll talk about just our normal stupid shit, movies, games, all that good stuff, and you can come back for that. If you'd rather wallow in it for a little bit with us, and maybe we'll try to talk about sources of joy that still exist in the world, and we'll figure it out. We're just going to have a conversation about this. And why not? So that'll be this episode. This is the Friday episode.
It's a very, very special episode of the Weekly Stuff Podcast.
That's one way to say it. And and then we'll be back on Monday with a normal episode, and we'll get back on track because, you know, number one thing I want to say is there is still an awful lot of cool stuff in the world and an awful lot of stuff to look forward to in the world. And we are going to be covering a lot of the stuff we're looking forward to in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah.
And this, luckily, cannot change that.
Yeah, no, like it's something that, like, luckily it's not going to affect, obviously, the way we make the podcast or anything like that, but it's such a shock to have it happen, and it's a thing that affects, it's a thing that affects the way that we're going to look at movies. It's a thing that's going to affect the way that we look at games, at art in general, because it affects our life, and, like, art is political by nature. Like, we are political by nature, like, whether you want to avoid it or not. Like, trying to make something that is apolitical or trying to live an existence that is apolitical is in and of itself a political act.
Yes.
So, like, we have to, I think this is so big, we can't do our normal thing on the podcast of just talking about, like, Doctor Strange or whatever without, or, like, for me specifically, Persona 5, and I think we'll talk about that a bit on this podcast, is that, like, I cannot talk about that shit without laying out a little bit of this Trump stuff because it is important going forward. It's like, you know, obviously it is not a sort of like tragedy in terms of like the cost of human life, but it is a sort of, we'll see how this goes, but it is a sort of social trauma in some ways for a lot of people, the way that 9/11 was. And it's like, you can't come back from something like that. Like, we can't come off of like this like cultural trauma and not address it on the podcast.
Absolutely. And we're white middle class guys.
Yeah, straight.
This is straight. This is not a trauma for us on the magnitude as it is for the LGBTQ community, for African Americans, Latino Americans, Muslim Americans, women,
people with disabilities.
People with disabilities and the countless other groups our president-elect has savagely mocked or threatened. And, you know, I'm sure we have listeners in those communities. We love you.
Yeah,
you are in no way alone. The United States of America did not fully elect Donald Trump. He did not win the popular vote. Let's just keep that in mind.
And half of the voting public didn't vote, which
for
is
Trump.
How that worked. Well, no,
didn't vote at all.
Didn't vote at all.
Yeah.
He got less than 25% of all the people who could vote voted for Donald Trump.
And I think that's one of the things. I think perspective is important.
Yeah.
And I totally understand people who are kind of losing their shit, especially if you are a member of one of those communities and I'm already hearing it's been 48 hours who have been threatened and harassed and in some cases physically abused already. It's easy to get very, very scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, perspective is important. And I don't think America is entirely defined by this. And there is a lot of love and strength out there. And I guess I just want to start with that because, as horrible as these last 2 days have been, just not only absorbing it, but then, as I said, hearing from people who have been harassed on the street or abused on the street or beaten or, in some cases, taken their own lives. It's easy to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
It's also, for me, I've found sources of inspiration in the world, seeing some of the protests that have happened that were peaceful and big, and hearing from people online coming together and just seeing, people put their voices out there and not ignoring this, which is good. So, as you say, it's impossible not to let it affect things. You were talking about Persona 5. I wrote an article that's up on the site right now. Not really an article. It was an essay from a bigger thing I was already working on, where I kind of retreated into some Mario games to feel good. And I never thought I would make a connection between the Super Mario series and the rise of fascism in the United States, but I did. And that's where we're at right now. It's a weird... Not like Mario is responsible for it. That's not my point.
I mean, it is, but that wasn't the point you're making in the essay.
Yes. Mario is Italian. He loves Benito Mussolini.
Yeah, I mean, it all started in the 80s. We all know. It's all those fucking kids playing Mario.
No.
And not getting out and being real kids.
Yeah.
It started it all.
All right, so Sean.
Yeah.
So like I said, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Donald Trump won the electoral college. It's actually 2 days out. We're still counting the popular vote. It might be the biggest gap between those two in American history, which is in and of itself significant for a number of reasons. But where's your head at? What's something you'd like to tackle?
Oh, fuck.
Just if you want me to try to come up with something, I can.
I mean, I guess one of the first things that we'll probably come back to this again and again, but it is something that's, I think, important to stress is that, like, if you are someone who is kind of fallen into a despair over this, it's like, I get it. Like, I woke up the morning after that, after having a terrible night of sleep.
Yeah.
And I just, like, woke up and, like, and actually, I listened to one of the podcasts I listen to occasionally is My Brother and Me, which is a comedy podcast by the McElroy brothers that they also write on Polygon and stuff like that. And one of the hosts of that podcast, Travis McElroy, just put out on Twitter this like small audio thing of him just like sort of addressing this and talking about it. And like the day after, like that whole morning was me just like kind of online finding stuff like this to sort of try to process what happened. And he made this comparison that I thought of like the emotional impact it had that was very, I think, poignant, and it helped me kind of process it a little bit, was that it kind of felt like you had lost someone. It was that same sort of sensation of like, there's this gap all of a sudden of like something that whether it was a person or like a belief you had that's like, that you had like, oh, people like in America are not going to elect Donald Trump. Like, that's not going to happen. That's not the country I live in. Like, it seems so absurd and disgusting and odious and completely against like everything that I think any sort of like reasonable human being should stand for, let alone like everything that America as a nation should stand for and has stood for in the past and certainly stood for in its founding. And that sense of disconnect between the day before the election and the day after, that gap felt like when I have lost people in my life and just be like, well, what do I do now? Like, because I know this is shit. Like, I know I feel like shit. I'm going to keep feeling like shit. There's going to be stuff that's going to remind me that, oh yeah, we fucking elected Donald Trump. What the fuck? How did that happen? And that's going to keep on getting me down. I think so. Hopefully, like people listening to this and are also having those sorts of feelings. I find like being able to sort of put it in words and contextualize it helps a lot. And it's important to remember, that it's not over yet. Like, because unlike having someone in your life, like losing someone, this kind of loss is not permanent. This kind of loss can be changed. Like, we can still fight this. There's so much we can do to sort of like push this back and to support people who are being oppressed, to support minority groups, to support the LGBT community. And there's so much you can do to, work towards the midterm elections and the next presidential elections. And it's like, that's a very important space to be in, especially if you are living in a state that did vote for Trump. Like, that's where the work needs to be done,
Right.
And not just for the presidential election, but like for the Senate, for the House. And if like you don't want to see this country run by a party that in this current presidential election was defined by racist, sexist, misogynistic policies, like work against that with everything you have.
I've been thinking a lot about how to say this. I thought I would be angry whenever I pictured Trump winning the election.
Right.
And on some level, of course, I am.
I mean, I'm fucking furious.
I'm furious, but I don't feel it yet. I feel sadness more than anything else. And obviously they're on a spectrum together.
Yeah.
And there are things I know in my mind I should be furious and outraged about, and I know mentally that outrage me, and we'll talk about those. But it hasn't gotten to my heart yet, because that's still full of sadness. And I think it comes back to that loss thing you're talking about, which is one of the weird byproducts of this election for me, and we've talked about it a little bit on the air, and Sean and I have talked about it off the air, is I've wound up feeling in some ways more patriotic than maybe I have in the past. And I don't like that word because I think it's lost a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
But all I mean is seeing things about the United States of America that maybe I took for granted, that this year I stopped taking for granted because Donald Trump made you stop taking them for granted. And, that goes back to just the history of our founding and our Constitution and the amazing thing that this has never happened before.
Right.
That we went 250 some years and we didn't elect a demagogue fascist.
Yeah.
That's a streak. That's pretty good. We can go 240 years without an accident, and then we go back to zero. Not saying there haven't been bad presidents before. There have.
Yeah, there have.
Yeah. This is different, I think, and we'll talk about that. But things I've respected and realized, and I've been reading presidential biographies and things like that, just because it's something that's very much on my mind, and I think that's why I'm sad. And when you talk about loss, or the McElroys were talking about loss, I think that's true. It does feel like part of something you believed in, which is the United States of America, feels in some way lost, because there are things you just thought people were more decent than this, that someone like this couldn't trick and lie to the American electorate so much, that of course we have racists and misogynists and sexists, but that our better angels had to win in the end. That I am a fan of President Barack Obama, and my favorite thing about him is that I think he's very sincere in the message he's been pitching his whole life about a unified America and about hope. And that I don't think
that's... about hard work and persistence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think those things are gone, but it does feel like, shit, there's a setback,
Yeah, I mean, in very literal, real ways in terms of, surely Obamacare is going to get repealed and stuff like that. That is incredibly upsetting to see that kind of really, really hard, painful work that Obama and his administration had to do to get the most basic form of healthcare reform passed in this country, and to have that get repealed like nothing, which is probably what's going to happen, is one of the more infuriating parts of this whole shit.
Oh, it's very. I would lose my insurance under that.
Yep.
And tens of millions of other people would. And my getting off topic there. My only hope would be that there's enough pushback from the electorate and enough sense among Republicans, who I don't think are stupid. I think they're opportunistic and sometimes dastardly, if I can use a gentle word for what I think.
Sure.
That they're always talking about repeal and replace. I hope whatever that replace is something that doesn't just set us back to zero. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a possibility. I think it's probably a remote possibility. But anyway, that's, I'm still in just the sadness phase, and my heart just hurts for the people who are really, really hurting from this. Yeah. And, that, and I'll say, I was going to say this later, but I'll say it up front. Donald Trump is not the thing that troubles me most. Donald Trump is an idiot. He's a buffoon. he's toothless. I don't think he is effectual as a person.
Sure.
I think the people he's surrounded himself with are, and I think what he has ignited in people is what scares me and what saddens me. And so, for instance, we have now our vice president is going to be Mike Pence, a man who believes in gay conversion therapy.
Yeah.
Which is one of the most horrible things in the world. And that there are going to be gay kids and teenagers who are going to grow up under a Trump-Pence administration with a man co-leading this nation who believes in stuff like that. Not that I think he has any chance of legislating that, but it's symbolically what it means is so harmful, and that you have, the most extreme GOP agenda in our lifetimes, maybe anyone's lifetimes alive today, and they have the power to enact those things under their presidential puppet.
Yeah.
And, that kind of stuff, I'm just still at the sadness phase of, shit, some bad days are ahead of us. And I almost look forward to the angry indignation phase that I'm surely going to arrive at, but it's just, I'm full of a lot of grief for a lot of this. So.
Yeah. Just to go back to the being so shaken by this, obviously, it's kind of all I've been thinking about for the past couple of days. And honestly, we have not processed this all the way yet, but there's something about Donald Trump getting elected that has it's not just shaken my belief in the American public, it's kind of shaken my belief in democracy as a form of government at some point. That it's especially when you look at the history of democracies, this is usually basically kind of what happens. What's rare is that we went so long without it happening. But you elect tyrants, or tyrants rise up through the system. You have your Caesars, you have your Napoleons, you have your Hitlers. That the National Socialist Party was elected in Germany. Now, granted, it's a very different scenario, and a democratic Germany had only existed for a couple of decades at that point. But still, that is how fascism has come into power traditionally in the history of our species, is it rises out of democracy. Yes. And so in seeing this happen to us and where we live, and after feeling America is too stable, it's been around for too long, and the founding fathers in ratifying the Constitution put too much into the Constitution to very specifically design it in such a way that this isn't supposed to happen, and instead having it happen here, it is something where I'm not saying that we need to tear down America right now or something like that, but it is something that going forward, it's something I've thought about a lot, of that America is a country that was designed fucking centuries ago at this point, and isn't necessarily designed to accommodate the size of what America is now, and what the population of America is now, both in the terms of the size of it and in the diversity of it. And it is something that I'm going to be thinking about a lot. Yes. Going forward is it's something you take for granted so much in America, of just that democracy and the American version of democracy is just the right way to do things. But if you are following the principles and the ideological principles of the founding fathers, and that's something we love to talk about all the time in America, yes. Those ideological principles are not just do what you are being told to do and follow the system as you were born into it. It is look at the system and say, well, if there's something fucked up about it, say, that's fucked up, and stand up for what you think is the right thing to do and is the best way to go about things, and work towards that, instead of just following the way it was written before.
Absolutely. And it's telling that one of the saving graces of our government as it's built is an amendment that was ratified less than 100 years ago, which is constitutional term limits. Yeah. And that, he can't be president for more than 8 years. Yeah. Not that I think he's going to get that far, but who the fuck knows? But, but yeah, I mean...
Although the other thing about that is the Constitution can change, governments change, nations change, and nations fall.
It does,
and,
it does.
America will never last forever.
No.
That's not how it works.
No, I think on that level, it's very hard to change the Constitution. You would need all 50 states sign off on these things.
If you go through the ways that the Constitution
yes.
Again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily what's going to happen.
I know.
I think it's a remote chance, but it is way more of a chance now than it's ever been, and it has always been a chance. People, it's one of the reactions that a lot of the media has had that frustrates me, is not even sort of acknowledging that it is possible That like there is nothing intrinsic about the universe that makes it that you can't change the way that America works, because America wasn't the government, the country wasn't a thing until we made it a thing. We have the power to make the people have the power to make the government and the country whatever it's going to be. And if we invest that power into Donald Trump and a handful of people around him, he can take advantage of that and change America. Like, again, I don't want to make the Nazi comparison too much, but it wasn't just like there was some sort of clause at the bottom of the fucking Nazi or the German Constitution that said, and when this happens, that means it gets changed into a dictatorship. Hitler and the National Socialists took power through election, and then they decided to turn it into dictatorship. So
no, I know.
That shit can happen, and I don't want to take it for granted right now.
No, and I don't want to either. It's such a tough conversation to have. But going back to one of the things you said, about, what are the principles of the Founding Fathers and where would we be now? It is a shocking thing when you think about, for instance, the role of the Electoral College. Yeah. Start there. It was so not designed to allow what happened 2 days ago.
No, the opposite of it, really.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was designed in part to give states equal representation, which you could argue is kind of what happened the other night, although I think you could also argue against that. Yeah. But it's also designed as one of the many stopgaps they put in place so that direct democracy couldn't be exploited by people like Donald Trump, who we've always had. Yeah. He's not the first guy like this. He's the first guy to successfully exploit the system this way in the United States. But yeah, I mean, so that's just one of those things where, and people just take it for granted. And I'm surprised we've gone 2 days and I haven't yet seen a media or like organized Democratic Party outrage over that. This is the second time this has happened to us in our lifetimes, and you and I are 24.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You and I are 24, and twice the popular vote and the Electoral College have split to once pretty fucking devastating ends for a lot of people, and probably pretty fucking devastating ends to a lot of people. And that's not okay. And clearly something is broken in that. Yeah. If you have to be, people have talked about, part of it's, the enthusiasm gap, whatever. If you have to be a politician on the magnitude of Barack Obama, probably the most just, remarkable, and I'm not trying to like kiss his ass, but just as a person, one of the more remarkable politicians of the last 50 years. Yeah. Like him and a Ronald Reagan, in terms of someone who really excites and ignites people. If you have to be on that level to be a Democrat and win both the popular vote and the Electoral College in this country, something is pretty fucked. Yeah. Because not everyone's going to be at that level. I'm sorry. We don't get another Obama unless Michelle wants to run, in which case, good for her, but she doesn't want to, and I don't want her to have to. Yeah. So, that's the kind of thing that just is so frustrating. And, on one level, of course, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama have to be gracious in this thing because you have to protect the peaceful transition of power. Yeah. Because if you don't do that, then we might lose the chance to fight back peacefully.
Yeah, like it is not the standing president's place to try to throw revolution or something like that. Like, it is his responsibility to, as you said, allow the peaceful transfer of power. And, if this is something that is so heinous that the American people won't stand for it, that's for the American people to do, not for Barack Obama.
Exactly. But I do think it's for people in his party and for the media to talk about this. That again, not every vote's been counted, but the largest popular vote Electoral College split in American history, that's not what this was for. And I think you make a good point. So many, and of course, there's going to be so much historical reflection on how much Donald Trump and his rise reflects so many things that just have been going on in America. But I think you see this kind of just taking the Constitution for granted so much in the last 20 years. Yeah. And, one of the best examples is the gun control debate, where you're using the Second Amendment to justify things that the founders could never have imagined.
Yeah, like the difference between what a firearm means today and what a firearm meant in the 1780s is pretty fucking different.
Yeah, and those kinds of things, it's just over and over parts of our government that don't work anymore, but people are attacking them for the wrong reasons.
For fuck's sake, this is one of the things that has always just been insane to me that this is how it works, is that the population and the size of America is so big that we had to put an artificial cap on the number of people that can be representatives in the House of Representatives. Right. It's like we're so big that we can't, like, it's like, I don't remember the exact number, it's 400 something. It's like, that's so many at some point that we can't really practically have anymore. But that's so fucked because the whole point of the House of Representatives is supposed to be a close relationship towards a relatively small number of people divided in the states. It's not, you're not supposed to represent like 1 million fucking people if you're a representative. That's not your place. No. But because we're so big, like, our form of government just can't sustain the size of it. Obviously, if you have to artificially cap the House of Representatives, that's completely undemocratic. It makes no sense. It goes against what the House was designed to be in the first place.
Yeah. Boy, there's so many thoughts on my head.
Yeah.
Racial animus. This is another thing I am already seeing. It was true throughout the election cycle, and it's even truer now, I feel like. You just see people in the media, and I know the media is a broad term, but we'll maybe define that more later. But afraid to say that a major reason this happened is racial backlash.
I mean, you look at the way that the vote split,
yes,
like, it has way more to do with race than anything else.
And
like, even more than gender.
Yes. And Donald Trump directly stoked racial flames. He got into the political spotlight by saying that Barack Obama was not an American, which I think is another thing that we've heard so much that we take it for granted, how much of a middle finger that is to our first black president, to a demonstrably just good dude who doesn't deserve that, and no other American president has ever had to be subject to that kind of thing. And, one of the most disgusting things of this whole thing is the thought of Barack Obama having to be in a room with this piece of shit and shake his hand and do this kind of thing. For a guy who just said his birth was illegitimate. And that got him popular. And no, I don't think every person who voted for Donald Trump is a dyed-in-the-wool racist, but they voted for one.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
At a certain point, I really don't care about the difference.
No, because, like, even if you are somehow, even if you voted for him and you are the, like, least racist person on the planet, like, your vote, like, you have committed an action that has a demonstrably racial effect that is going to, I mean, it's the thing that's the most troubling for me is what this says about our relationship with the Muslim community more than anything else, because that is, like, Donald Trump has offended every underrepresented group on the planet, like, to fucking heaven. Like, it's insane the degrees to which this asshole has just insulted and attacked people constantly from all sorts of groups, but it's specifically the Muslim community and the way that he has turned them into terrorists and fiends and tried to paint them so much as the other. That's the thing that scares me more than anything else, because it is the most irresponsible, it is the most odious, it's the most disgusting, and it is the most distinctly fascist thing that has been a part of his campaign. And it is about race. It isn't about religion. Like, they don't give a shit about the religious part of it. It's all about the fact that they're brown and they're from the Middle East. If Muslims generally looked like us, if they looked white, it would not be an issue.
There are white Muslims.
Yeah.
No one cares about the white Muslims.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that's, it's just the scariest part to me, because it's the part that is most likely to lead to a lot of people being dead. And, like, I don't think that's exaggerating to see that outcome.
Not exaggerating in the slightest. And one of the scariest parts of it is, and this is true of every part of the Trump phenomenon, but what he did was take things that the GOP and the political right in America have been saying since 9/11 and before, but often saying indirectly.
Yeah.
They have been saying Muslims are nothing but terrorists and mongrels or whatever. They have been denigrating black Americans through their actions. They have denigrated women through their actions. They just don't say it directly. What this guy did is he came up and he said it all directly. And what's scary is that we all thought that would be the death of the GOP, is that now people who had somehow missed the clues would finally hear it and say, you know what? I was wrong. I shouldn't have supported this. That's what we thought would happen.
Yeah.
And it didn't. The Republicans got more than they could have dreamed in their wildest imaginations. They control everything. They're going to control the Supreme Court for a generation. They've got the House. They got the Senate. They got the presidency. They've got 33 governorships. State houses everywhere. They got more than they ever could have bargained for because they got Donald Trump. They are the luckiest people in the fucking country because they sinned and lied and hated their way up.
Yeah.
And disgusting. Because, again, it's not Donald Trump who is like the center of what offends me about this. It's everything in the orbit. He has this gravity to him of hate.
I mean, yeah, he like opened up the bottle, you know,
Yeah.
like it was so pent up, and it just took a fucking asshole and a monster and an idiot to open it up and take advantage of it. And I'm not convinced that like the Republican Party is going to be fine going forward. Like they have all this power in American politics in this moment,
right.
But I think they're still probably totally fucked because they don't have a workable platform for anything anymore going forward.
No.
Like and I don't think they're going to be very effective at governing at this point either.
No.
Like, because they don't have a workable platform, and that's not something that you can build on in the future. Like,
no.
The Republican Party needs to take a look at itself I think the Democratic Party needs to as well in a different way, but sort of deconstruct itself and build itself back up into something different. Because even if you got elected through the most disgusting, hated way possible, and the majority of the country is going to hate and despise the president of their country, that's not going to work for your party for the foreseeable future, or for like beyond the foreseeable future.
No, I agree. I mean, one of the trends of this election cycle is as polling data was coming in throughout the months, and yes, the polls were kind of wrong in the end in some ways, but one of the things you started to see, and the final numbers do bear this out, is that, okay, Hillary Clinton lost a lot of states, including the states you would expect her to lose, like Texas, Georgia, Arizona, but she lost those by smaller margins than any Democrat in decades.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is, those demographics are changing whether they like it or not, whether they elect Donald Trump or not. And it was too soon for Hillary Clinton to win this election with these demographics. But by 2020, by 2024, if you have one party that only has support of white people, and if you look at that numbers,
white people,
they only had support of older white people. That is not going to be enough going forward, and I hope that's a source of hope for people.
Yeah.
Because luckily, American democracy does give us the chance to fix this, assuming nothing gets irreparably broken in the next 4 years, which maybe is a big assumption, but we'll see. And that is one of the things that is going to happen. You know, I am not broken of my belief that progress is an upward trajectory.
Through history, yes.
Through history, it is.
There are temporary setbacks, but like things will get better ultimately, assuming the human species survives. Because there's also an environmental aspect of this election. But
I don't even want to deal with that today. It's too No, but I that's the point. Is that in history, and yes, we are living through a dark historical moment. We're going to be living through a dark historical moment. We're on a downturn. That doesn't mean it can't turn back up. You know, that doesn't. But parts of Barack Obama's legislative legacy are going to be taken down. The importance of having a black man and his family in the White House and what that has done for the black children of this country is not going away, and those kids are going to grow up.
Yeah, like
the young women who saw what happened to Hillary Clinton in this election are going to grow up.
Yeah.
And they are not going to support what they saw as kids.
Yeah, it is one of the most heartening things about the past couple of days after the election is seeing like the protests in general, but a lot of the protests of high school students coming out and protesting this, which I like that a lot, just because it's it hasn't been that long since we were in high school, and I remember that feeling of being like you can't quite vote yet, but you're more than old enough to pay attention to what's going on in politics and just be like, well, this fuck is I can't do anything. I can't commit the most basic action to try to like influence this stuff, and seeing them get motivated to go out and have protests means that, well, you know, in the midterm election and then the next presidential election, they will be in the electorate. So that will make a difference.
Yeah. The arc of history is long, but I do think it bends towards the good.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And yeah, you know, I think high school kids today are a group that are obviously growing up in more multicultural environments. Gayness and transgenderism and those sorts of things don't bother them, and they're going to rule the world someday. And again, the GOP may be laughing now, but if all they have, and they're going to be set back for a generation at least by this, if all they have is old white people who hate others, not going to be good for that much longer.
Yeah.
It was good this time, but, we'll see who's laughing in 4 or 8 years. And that's not a lot to cling to, but it's something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a frightening moment in American politics in so many ways. It's a frightening moment in the world. Like the other thing is like Brexit happening earlier this year, and that it's such a just straight fucking line. You know, like I kind of wish that Brexit had happened like a month before our election, because I think that would maybe have influenced it more. It's like it's a bit too far away in the American public's consciousness and memory of, but like you see Brexit and you see electing Donald Trump, and it's like, man, that's the same fucking thing at some point. Like, it's the same movement, it's the same kinds of politicians taking advantage of the same kind of hateful energy, and it's caused by this period of instability right now, but hopefully, it won't be that long before things stabilize and get settled and we can start working on progress again and moving forward again.
It's one of these weird things where we're living through this moment where obviously one of the most prevalent things said by people is, how is this happening?
Yeah.
And I think for historians, this is going to be one of the easiest stories to write. Because, as you say, the line is so easy to draw, not just in America, but around the world. I mean, it's so easy to draw the line of America, a nation founded on slavery, elected its first black president, and then elected a fucking racist.
Yeah.
That's not hard to understand. It's hard to feel, and it's hard to keep your bile down when you think about. But from a historical perspective of understanding, now that it's happened, it feels almost inevitable.
Yeah, and that's I was talking to my mom yesterday about that it feels like now that you're on the other side of it, it's just like, well, fuck, I don't think this could have, if this is how it turned out, like, I don't think it could have gone any other way. Like, it does have a sense of, like, inevitability to it in a weird way of just, like, of that it's bigger than just America at some point, and it's something that, I mean, it's something that in the 20th century started happening with globalism, and we need to deal with is that a lot of people don't like globalism, but it doesn't go backwards, it's too late. We have fucking airplanes, guys. We have to deal with this sense of, like, we are a world of people, not just nations of people anymore. Like, we can't just pretend that we haven't seen the world from outside the box, that we haven't been to space, that I can't just go to fucking Japan in a day if I wanted to. Like, we can't put that genie back into the bottle. And ultimately, I think globalism is only has power to be a good thing in the end. And we have to... There are groups of people in America, in the UK, and everywhere in the world that has to deal with that reality at some point and not use that as an excuse to blame immigrants and refugees, Yeah.
Or they just die eventually. And
that's how it's going to actually happen. But, that is, at some point, that's my version of, you're going to have to face up to that, because...
Right. I want to talk about one aspect of this we haven't talked about yet, which is gender. And I think it's one of the things that makes me saddest about this is, there is no better lesson or case study or metaphor in misogyny than what happened to Hillary Clinton this year. And I understand some people don't like her. And I get you may have little policy differences with her and that sort of thing. But the prevailing attitude against Hillary Clinton was not about substantive discussion. It was about straight fucking sexism. That's all it was. You would not ever hound a man about the email things the way you did.
Yeah.
You would never accuse a man of being shrill because he shouts at rallies, as every politician in the history of the United States, maybe other than George Washington, he was a quiet dude, does. Right?
Yeah.
You would never accuse men of these things. And you know how we know that? Because nobody accused Donald Trump of those things. Nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously some people did. But like the prevailing attitude in the media and in our culture was that if Donald Trump was corrupt, whatever. Boys will be boys.
Yeah.
If Hillary Clinton has a hint of corruption on her, burn the witch at the stake.
Yeah, I mean, like, the most stark thing about the double standard is a sense of, like, because this is another thing, I had a very long conversation with my mom yesterday about all this shit, just, like, trying to unpack all this stuff. There's another thing we talked about, is just, like, all people had with Hillary was the fucking emails, to the point that the FBI director did his insane, immoral thing of putting out that very vague statement about a week before the election that ultimately led to absolutely fucking nothing, raising the specter of the emails again. But all it ever was with Hillary Clinton was motherfucking emails, which is a thing that nobody actually cared about the substance of that as an argument. I mean, it's something you see in politics all the time. Nobody who raised the argument against Hillary Clinton of the fucking emails was concerned about Hillary Clinton as a threat to national security. Should she be elected into the Oval Office? Nobody cared about that. Nobody looked at that and said, like, well, clearly she doesn't know how to handle classified material, so she can't be president. It's just, well, this is a bad thing, and that means I don't like Hillary, so I can use bad thing to justify I don't like Hillary. And that's all.
Which is a larger, I don't like women.
Yeah, sure. But it's
clear
like,
on that.
but it was only ever used as ammunition. It was never used as an argument. And the thing that's most frustrating about it is that Donald Trump was fucking drowning in scandals from minute one of his fucking campaign to he is still drowning in scandals because he has multiple trials he's going to have to appear to concerning his own actions and the actions of his business.
In December, he will be appearing at a trial for child rape.
Yes.
And you probably haven't heard about that because it hasn't been reported because the media was fucking spineless this year.
But because Hillary Clinton half a fucking year ago was under a federal investigation that came up with a conclusion that she could not be prosecuted, she did nothing to be prosecuted for, that somehow basically feels like it was used as a cannonball to sink her election. I think people would have found something if it hadn't been the emails, where it's like, Donald Trump, it was one thing after another, and I can't believe that he's been elected and I haven't seen anyone fucking bringing up the fact that, remember like a month ago when we had that fucking video of him talking about sexually assaulting women? Like, remember that? How come nobody, like, that's the dude we literally just elected to be president. It's the same dude on that tape. How is no one talking about that?
Not just the tape, but 12 women and counting who accuse him of doing this thing he confesses to.
Yes.
It's not he said, she said, it's they both said it.
Yeah.
They both said it.
And then multiple corroborating sources outside of the women who just accused him of other people they talked to shortly after the event have come and corroborated their story, or their story of the events as well. And so, yeah, it's a pretty clear fucking picture of the kind of dude Donald Trump is and the kind of opinions he has on women. And just like, I just can't believe that it's not coming up, because to me, it's all I can think about is like, shouldn't he be impeached already?
Yes.
Shouldn't he should all be, like, it should have, like, 1 second he was elected, and then the next second is like, oh wait, fuck, we have to impeach this dude. And I guess he hasn't been sworn into office yet, so maybe that's still to come. But we should get, like, ready for that shit, because he's done more than enough to be impeached.
Just by legal precedent, if you can impeach Bill Clinton for getting a blowy in the Oval Office,
exactly,
you can impeach Donald Trump for, you know what? Let's put the sexism aside for a minute. Having verifiable ties to our enemies in Russia.
Yeah, that's the other part that no one's talking about. Fucking Samantha Bee had that amazing piece a couple of weeks ago where she literally went to Russia and talked to Russian hackers who have been influencing the American election on discussion boards at the command of the Russian government. And she talked to them. It wasn't like they were actual people talking about this shit that they actually did. It's not some like, well, maybe Russia's trying to influence the election or not. It's like, no, we've talked to them. We straight up know they were. And again, no one's talking about that in the media. It is insane to me.
It's insane that you have to have... Samantha Bee is a wonderful human being and an intelligent person. She should not have to be a journalist in that way.
Yeah, she should be able to be a comedian, you know? She
did more in those 5 minutes on TV to expose Donald Trump's verifiable ties to the Russian government than a lot of major media outlets did in the entire election. And no one cared. Hillary shouldn't have used her own private email server. We all admit that.
Yeah, sure.
But you know what?
It was a mistake, for sure.
Donald Trump the President of the United States should not have ties to the Kremlin.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And I think there's just, man, it's, these are probably the white people who voted for Trump probably grew up hating Russia in the Cold War. How soon we forget.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to hold Russia's feet to the fire forever. If they get their act together, I'd love to welcome them into the fold. But they don't have their act together, guys.
No, Putin's not a very nice dude.
No.
Last time I checked.
No, and you just see, and I do think there have been, I don't want to completely discount the media. I think there have absolutely been some stars in journalism over this last year who I think stood up and did what they had to do, like the Washington Post is a phenomenal example, who actually became one of the best sources on Trump once they were barred from all his events. And they said, you know what? Fuck it. We're not going to angle for access anymore. We're just going to tell the truth. And something I've heard from multiple journalists this year is that one of the most persistent biases in journalism is not to the left, it's not to the right, it's to access. And so if you think Donald Trump, the presidential candidate, now the presidential elect, is going to stop you from interviewing him or those around him, then you might sit on a story where you know he has ties to Russia. You might stop reporting on him saying it's okay to grab women by the pussy. You might stop reporting about the 12 women because ultimately you want access and you want to sell papers. And that's horrible.
Yeah.
But it's how the world sadly works at the moment, and I hope and I do think it's going to happen. I think more journalistic organizations are going to stand up and realize we're bigger than that. We have to be. Because it's already started.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do think the gender thing, there's been a lot of good stuff out there on Twitter. And one of the things I saw was, and it made me so sad because it's so true, which is that the ultimate message of this election to a lot of people is that you can be the most qualified woman in the world for a job, and you still can't have that job, but your abuser can.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Hillary Clinton had more experience than most people who have ever run for this office.
Yeah, no
and whether you like her or not, that's undeniable. Even Donald Trump fucking said it in his acceptance speech.
Yeah. I mean, no matter what your opinion of her, positions are, there's no questioning that Hillary Clinton is an insanely effective politician. And that's what you want. You want someone effective. As the president, you don't want a doofus,
Yes. And the doofus, it's okay for him to make every mistake a human can possibly make. But he's got a
up to and beyond committing crimes.
Yes.
Which the dude confessed to committing crimes.
Yeah.
Sexual assault is illegal.
Yeah. But, well, for now, no, I'm just kidding. That's not, I don't think that's going to be changed. But anyway, who knows? But yeah, no, he had a dick, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's sad. And did you see Seth Meyers' piece on the election from last night?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Seth Meyers has been, I think, behind Samantha Bee, the best late-night host this year. And because of how he's risen to the occasion on politics. And he had just a great, not off-the-cuff monologue, but it was much more kind of down-to-earth, didn't have a lot of the pictures and things, where he just said, okay, we didn't elect our first woman president, but that means that someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's mother is out there, and she will be. That's going to happen one day. And, that's an inspiring thing to think about and hope we all live to see it. And they're out there, and they've probably just been ignited by this, and it feels like a really horrible slap in the face to the women of this country.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, that and the idea of fucking Roe v. Wade probably getting repealed by the new Supreme Court. That's sort of more than just a slap in the face, but, Yeah, that's so hard to fathom. I don't.
Yeah,
right? There's some shit. There's so much shit riding on this that it's so hard to keep track of all the stuff,
Hang in there, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. You deserve a retirement. You're not going to get it.
Don't go to the Grey Havens yet. You're so
important to this nation.
Please, Galadriel, don't do it. We need you more than ever.
We do. And she knows that.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot that could go wrong. There's a lot of forces that are going to be fighting it. And we will see. We'll see. What else? Well, I think we'll move on to some other related feelings from this. Anything else to pick apart we want to talk about right now from
I don't know.
the election?
It's probably, but I can't think of anything right now. I'm so angry. Just deep inside, I'm just so angry about all of this.
Yeah.
Man.
And so how are you coping?
I mean, I guess we'll talk about this now because this is something that when we were like sort of discussing on text when to do this podcast that I shot you a little bit of stuff about Persona 5 because that was like there was two things I did that night and like going into early the next morning of when like it was pretty clear where the tides were turning is first, and this was completely inexplicable, but it was probably the most cathartic, soothing thing I could have done. I don't know what happened that made me think to do this, but I took out my Vita and I just started playing Persona 4 Dancing All Night. And I just played the Nanako songs. And like out of just nowhere, I haven't played that game since I platinumed it basically and did the some of the DLC stuff. And just like I was like staring at my phone and just like staring at the fucking the electoral map. I was just going, oh fuck. It's like I can't just sit here doing this. I need to do something else. I just looked over at my table where my Vita was there charging, and I was like, okay. And I just like grabbed it and put it on, and I was actually pretty impressed at how quickly I was able to pick it back up and play it on all night difficulty. So I did that because that was just soothing.
The night of my brother and I just got on Xbox and started playing Overwatch, which we haven't played in a while, but it's like that's one of those games that's tough to be sad while you play.
Yeah, because it's got similar, I think, to one of the things that just made me think of Dancing All Night was just like I wanted something colorful and happy, and there's nothing more purely joyous than Nanako dancing to the Shadow World remix in Persona 4 Dancing All Night.
Or the Juness song.
Yeah, or the Juness song.
Her favorite song in the world.
It's like it is the most potent salve for the soul I have encountered in my 24 years on this earth, and I don't think I'll ever find something better than that. You know, other than maybe if I had like some black tar heroin on hand or something, would have just like gone to another planet.
As many people have said, it is not a fucking coincidence that 4 states legalized marijuana the same night we elected Trump, because we're gonna need that weed.
Yeah, no, seriously, like, you know, like weed's not quite as strong as that Nanako, but it's okay, you know, it's a gateway drug. But then
combine them.
Yeah, no, like that's dangerous. You don't want to get high and then do like a heartbreak remix on Persona 4 Dancing All Night. You'll be out of it for months, dude. You just walk down the street and everyone has giraffe heads, you know. But yeah, then other than that, I was thinking a lot because I've been thinking a lot about in general Persona 5. Again, this is maybe a bit of a weird transition because obviously we're talking about very serious political topics, but it's something that whether it's through like the fun times or the dark times, like we are always playing games, we're always watching movies. We're like that's one of the reasons why we do this podcast is because we're always doing this stuff. We're always engaged with it critically, and it's something that helps us process things, and these things help us process art, and it's a part of the process. And so I finished Persona 5 in late October. It was shortly after the last podcast we recorded, and obviously it's been a bit of a break since then because we've been busy. But Persona 5 is an incredible game, and it has a very kind of weird ending in some ways. Particularly, I was very perplexed by the ending when I first played it. It was just like, not that it's like, not saying it's bad or not saying that it's like insane and like out there or something, but it was just like I couldn't fully process in some ways the note it ended on. I couldn't put the puzzle together about why they ended the game precisely the way they ended it. And when I say the ending of the game, I mean literally like the last cutscene in the credits. And I was just sort of, when I finished the game, I was playing the last cutscene, and I was just sort of like processing it and being like, what are they trying to kind of say with ending it this way? Because it kind of felt weirdly anticlimactic, although the credit song was very good and the credits are very beautiful in terms of how they're stylized. And then there is an after credits scene in Persona 5 that's very brief, like little sort of like kind of almost like 5 seconds of animation or something that sort of like gives you this last note to end the game on. And that gave me this emotional reaction after it. But I still I was like, oh, okay, that's what this ending is about. But I couldn't quite put into words about like, what am I reacting to here? It was just like, and so weeks after playing that game, I was still like, I would be going on walks and I'd be thinking about this ending to Persona 5 and just like...
That makes it a good ending already.
Yeah, of just like, what... what are like, because the game is so complex, like there's so much going on in terms of so many topics and themes and issues that the game tackles, because it's so concerned with very big social cultural issues, way more than the more sort of like personal philosophical things that I think Persona 3 and Persona 4 were largely about. And Persona 5 is tackling stuff like sexual assault. It is tackling stuff like fascism. It's tackling stuff like organized crime. It's tackling stuff like companies that abuse their employees and stuff like that, and low wage workers and stuff. And so it's dealing with all these sort of like social ills, and it deals with teenagers and kids growing up in this world and having to deal with the fact that they are living in this world and living oppressed by all these adults and all these people in power, and they can't do anything about it, and having to come to terms with that. And so obviously that's a hugely complex issue to tackle, and it's very hard to sort of deal with that in quite the sort of like poignant, tragic way that Persona 3 dealt with death as its primary theme, for example. But so like I was just sort of like very confused in some ways about the Persona 5 ending, and then the election happened, and I saw that Trump was probably going to win, and one of the first things that popped to mind was the ending of Persona 5, and not just the ending, because a lot of that game, the ending is about the whole game, obviously, like because the credits, more so than I think even like Persona 4, the credits are so important for the way that they go through all the characters and show clips of stuff that happened through the game, because you're supposed to, in those credits, remember that whole journey, because like my total playtime on the game was like 112 hours, and the sum of that is because I play that in Japanese, but going online and reading other people's reactions, like I'm pretty sure Persona 5 is by a fairly significant measure the longest Persona game, which is saying something. And so remembering that whole journey and all the characters you meet and all the topics it touches, and there was just something about that ending that I don't want to spoil it, but it has this very sort of cathartic message, and it has this very powerful message about how do you live in these times. And obviously, like we were talking earlier about globalism, like Japan is dealing with the same kinds of issues that we're dealing with, that the UK is dealing with, and they're dealing with it in slightly different ways, and the problems they're facing are slightly different than ours, but they're in the same. They come from the same fundamental source. And so I think Persona 5, when it comes out, I'm so fascinated by what the critical reception of it's going to be. I'm so fascinated to see what teenagers playing this game, what their takeaway is going to be, because another thing that made me reanalyzing my reaction to the game in the face of the Donald Trump stuff, one of the things I realized was that, I have gotten older since I started this whole Persona stuff, and in some ways I've realized I was maybe a little bit out of touch with a couple of the characters, in particular Ryuji, who's sort of the Yosuke equivalent, and I really liked him and I had empathized with him and stuff, but there was something about the Donald Trump thing that made me realize, oh, this is why he's as mad as he is half the time in this game. This is why he just can't stand this shit anymore, because that's what's so much about Persona 5 is that all the protagonists have been, and all the sort of playable characters have been so oppressed and abused by different facets of power in their society that they just can't stand it anymore, and that's why they are given the power of Persona, and that is they use it to try to fight that, and they struggle with how to deal with that. And the way the game ends doesn't end with some sort of magic message about that, this is how you live in this culture, and it doesn't just say well, everything is fixed and perfect and it's some utopia because you used your magic Persona powers to fix everything. It's you have made a difference, but the biggest thing in that game is that there is a philosophical place that the characters reach at the end, that they have grown up and they are in a different mindset that enables them to tackle the world in front of them, and it's just stuff like that. And I think other people maybe will have a different interpretation, because a lot of the stuff at the very end of that game is sort of vague, and it's some of it is left up to symbolism and stuff like that. But to me, that was one of the most powerful things about, in a weird way, the process of watching this election go through, was me coming back to this game I had finished half a month ago and realizing oh, this is what that game was about. Like, and using that as a framework to sort of process what was happening it's just incredibly cathartic for me. And I'm so insanely curious to see what people are going to take away from this.
Art finds us.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think we often think we pick a work of art to experience or watch or play, and in the end, because it is a mysterious thing in this world, it found us, and it told us something we needed to hear. I came to Persona 4, which was the first one I played, because you'd been recommending it, and you did that year-end podcast on it, and then I said, fuck it, I don't have the money, but I'm going to buy a Vita, and I did it, and I played Persona 4.
And then I said, well, fuck it, I don't have the money, but I'm going to buy a Vita and play Persona 4 again.
Right. But no, that was a few months after the death of my father, and that game helped me get back in the world. Yeah. And I don't minimize that. It found me. And then over that summer, I played Persona 3. I went back and played Persona 3, and there's a whole episode about it. You can hear me crying in a corner about Persona 3, but it helped me, I hate the word get over, but it helped me cope with the death of my father and process it in a way I just couldn't before I found that game, and literally changed my life.
Yeah.
And now it sounds like Persona 5 did that for you, and it's probably going to do that for a lot of us come February.
Yeah, it is insane. There are some things in that game that feel nigh prophetic. And like, it's not like there is not a one-to-one like Donald Trump character in that game, but there is a politician who is one of the main villains of the game that's like, he is not just Donald Trump, but there are very clear similarities between a lot of the stuff he's doing in the game and a lot of the stuff Donald Trump and his campaign did, and the way that that game's really good. And it's something that it's just I'm so excited to read critical reactions from like game writers I like over here, and like I just want to hear if people find that in that game the way that I did that night. Because it's also, like, the crazy thing about it is, like, again, I had already finished it. Like, I had finished it for a couple of weeks at that point, or, like, at least a whole week at that point. And so it's not like I wasn't in the middle of playing it and found it. Like, I had already finished Persona 5 and done the Persona 5 thing pre-Donald Trump election. And then while the election was happening, it was like, oh, fuck. And, like, I just, like, my mind just went back into that game in a crazy way.
Yeah. I wrote that piece on Mario. It's up on the site. It was just from another project I was working on, and then I wound up writing some notes as I was mixing the Mushroom Kingdom with Trump's America in my mind. And so you can go read that. I won't repeat it here. It was just, I don't know, finding a little solace there as we do in art. I have not been able to bring myself really to, like, watch anything since then. I tried to watch 20 minutes of Gilmore Girls, which usually is what cheers me up, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I've only been watching, like, Let's Plays and shit on YouTube.
Yeah.
When I need some downtime.
But I just wanted to say, as we talk about this, one of the things I've thought about over the last few days in terms of, I think people are talking about, what films to seek out, what pieces of art to kind of just help understand the world. One I keep coming back to, and it's also Japanese, and it's not a coincidence, is Hayao Miyazaki's last film, The Wind Rises.
Right, yeah.
Have you seen that yet?
No.
Okay.
But I've seen, like, clips of it and stuff.
It's a good one to watch right now. But
it's really long, so, like, I just keep on waiting for, like, the right bit of time to watch it. It's not a movie I feel like I can just pop in at any moment.
Oh, it's one of his heaviest films, and I think it's one that was a little misunderstood when it came out, and is going to be critically reappraised in the years to come. And I especially think after some of the things that have happened in the world, because it's about, The Wind Rises is about Jiro Horikoshi, who designed the Zero Fighter, which is one of the warplanes Japan used to bomb Pearl Harbor, parts of Korea, part of their war effort. And it is an interesting film because Miyazaki takes Horikoshi basically as his protagonist and treats him as an artist, and not, a war criminal or one of these things, as we often associate, like, an odd Joshua Oppenheimer or something in kind of the public consciousness. And so the whole movie is about sort of Horikoshi's artistic journey to building this plane that would lead to so much death. And he, starts the movie basically with the great Japanese earthquake of the early 1900s. So it's in part recalling things like the tsunami from Japan a few years ago, which we talked about on the Shin Gojira podcast. And I think I brought up The Wind Rises there too, because they're clearly coming from the same thoughts. But it also is about Japanese nationalism and about war and about pacifism, which is Hayao Miyazaki's own personal belief and the belief of a lot of Japanese people, because that's kind of how they rebuilt their government after World War II, was committing themselves to things like peace. And ultimately, the Wind Rises is about this guy who wants to create something beautiful, winds up putting something horrible out into the world, and then he doesn't, it kind of breaks his life. But the movie elides a lot of that, which is actually a very Japanese cinematic tradition. If you look, for instance, at the work of Yasujiro Ozu, which is where sometimes big things happen and they just happen off screen. And basically all of World War II happens off screen in The Wind Rises. And I think that jarred certainly some American critics who don't get that kind of filmmaking. But I've been going back to that movie and I don't even know if I can draw the literal connection right now, but it is about something horrible happening in the world and recognizing beauty in it. And I think that's the ultimate message of Miyazaki's entire filmography. There is no Miyazaki movie that is not deeply touched by trauma. That's his entire filmography is about. My Neighbor Totoro, lest we forget, is about two children dealing with the death of their mother, or the illness of their mother.
An insanely creepy cat bust that I just can't deal with.
Anyway, but I think The Wind Rises it's his last film because it's his closing statement on these things and about how do you live in a world that is so broken that even your great work of art is twisted into a machine of death. And that's, and I wrote my entire senior thesis on this. So this is a film that I'm deeply engaged with, but I think, so there's a lot of levels to it, which is also, it's clearly an autobiographical film for Miyazaki in some of those ways. But I think that's a movie that I've liked more every time I've seen it and written about it and all these things. And I'm going to have to revisit it soon because I think it so starkly lays out a problem I think we're all going to be feeling in the next few days, which is how do you continue seeing beauty in a world that feels broken?
Yeah.
But it's there. And it's not going away because an orange buffoon decided he wanted to buy an army.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's what I kind of want to close this podcast with. Let's just go back and forth. What are things you love in the world? What are things you are looking forward to in the world? What are things we're thankful for? Just anything. We can go off top of our heads. I'm so thankful I had Super Mario Galaxy to play over the last few days and just jump into that and have fun with a hero who just smiles all the time. Because you know what? That's not empty. It means something.
Yeah. I had pizza for dinner tonight, and
that's great.
That was pretty fucking good. It was good.
I
enjoy pizza a lot. I have enjoyed pizza a lot throughout my life, and that was one of the most cathartic pizzas I've had because it was the first pizza I had post the apocalypse.
Yes. I spent the entire Wednesday after the election with my dog, basically.
Okay, yeah.
And we went to the dog park, and that was really beautiful in some ways, and I took some pictures and they're on my Instagram, and so that was fun, and my dog is so happy because she doesn't know what politics are, and nothing can get that smile off her face, and if she can smile, so can we, and I love that.
Yeah. I've already sort of talked about this a little bit, but I feel like I need to bring it up again. I am eternally grateful for Nanako Dojima. She is the light of my life. She's the light of the world of us as a people. And I believe that no matter how dark things get, she will lead us back to where we were and to even greater heights.
You've already played it, but I will get to play Persona 5 in a few months.
Yeah.
And honestly, more importantly to me, you and I get to talk about it.
Yes, yeah. On that note also, I am extremely grateful for Morgana. You are my best friend. You are the most beautiful cat in the world. You are amazing. If you and Nanako were somehow fused into the same person, I don't know how I would deal with it. And I love you, Morgana.
Thanksgiving is coming up, and my family has already chosen. We're not going and visiting other family. We're going to stay here and be together with the people we love most, and I am intensely looking forward to that.
That's good. Yes, I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think I might be out of stuff that I'm grateful for now.
That's okay. What's something you're looking forward to?
Something I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to... like I was going to say Final Fantasy 15, which I am, but more, I'm really looking forward to Gravity Rush 2 because I just want something pleasant, like really pleasant, and Gravity Rush is nothing if not pleasant, and Gravity Rush 2 looks even more like that. So that's,
I'll take Final Fantasy 15 because you know what? We fucking need a giant weird-ass RPG to just throw ourselves in and escape to this kingdom.
I already did that a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if I have the energy for another JRPG.
But now you got your boy band to drive around and listen to Eris's theme.
Okay, yeah, no, the car trip aspect of it is definitely a good post-Trump cathartic sort of material, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I will take that one for the team.
Okay, yeah, sure. There's that. I'm really looking forward to Star Wars or Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I'm looking forward to Donnie Yen being in that movie.
It's gonna be
I
good.
like in the trailer when he smiles, because I like when Donnie Yen smiles.
Absolutely.
It makes me smile.
If we're on movies, I was going to take a different movie, but I'll come back to it. I think Logan is suddenly going to feel really prescient when it comes out, because that looks like what we're all imagining Trump's America looks like.
Yeah, that is Trump's America, is all the mutants are gone, except for Hugh Jackson.
So maybe I'm looking forward to that in a way where it'll be like a cathartic experience, not a happy one. But you know what? It came into my head.
Yeah, I am happy for having seen the Logan trailer in front of Doctor Strange.
It looks cool.
That is such a good trailer, and it is a very good trailer to see in a movie theater when you have really nice movie theater speakers playing Hurt by Johnny Cash.
Absolutely. That would be great if they just did a listen party to Hurt after the night of the election, where we just listen to it on a loop.
That is, I think we can both agree we are very grateful for Hurt by Johnny Cash as being one of the best songs ever.
You know what? I'm thankful
recorded.
for Johnny fucking Cash, because I was at Walmart the other day because I had to buy some socks. And I'm thankful for new socks. That's my dog ate all my old socks, so this is great. These feel good. That's not.
Are you looking forward to when your dog's going to eat your new socks, and so you need to get new socks?
Maybe, but I was going to say they had a Johnny Cash Greatest Hits CD there. And it was $5, and I bought that and listened to it on the way home, and that made me feel good, because Johnny Cash, that voice, man, dude can sing.
Okay, yeah. But on that note, I'm very grateful for physical media. Because when America falls and the internet goes away, I am grateful that I will still be able to, play video games and watch movies and listen to music once, everything else is gone and taken from us.
Absolutely. I have been completing my Bob Dylan collection lately.
Okay, yeah.
And I've been listening to, because I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I've got basically everything he's ever done on CD. I actually collect his stuff on CD. And I'd missed, though, the last few years of the bootleg series releases they do, which is these big archival releases. And I recently listened to the 6-disc set of the complete Basement tapes, and of what they call the Cutting Edge, which is all his sessions from 65 to 66, which is the albums like Highway 61, Blonde on Blonde, Bring It All Back Home. And man, that was just throwing yourself into the evolution of one of the great American artists, now Nobel Prize winner. That was really satisfying. And a thing as an American we can be fucking proud of is we produced the world's greatest fucking poet.
Sure, yeah.
So there we go.
I'm grateful for pornography. Just thinking about stuff that has helped me get through this very tough time. That's a big one. I'm going to be 100% honest here. Big contributor.
That's bold and honest, and I love it.
So, hey, this is nothing if not the honest episode of the Weekly Stuff Podcast.
We don't give them enough credit. Porn stars do more to bring joy into lonely people's lives than most people realize.
I mean, yeah, it's very true.
I said lonely. That was derogatory. Hey, everybody enjoys pornography.
No, it's porn that makes the world go round. I'm pretty sure that's how that song goes.
Yes. I think Johnny Cash sang it. It was very dramatic. He sang it at Folsom Prison.
Yeah.
That one got applause.
They did really enjoy that one.
That would actually, I think, be kind of rubbing it into the poor inmates. Anyway, I'm looking forward to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
This is I saw that trailer in front of Doctor Strange as well. It's a good trailer.
That looks so much better than it has any right to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be good. And as someone who loved Harry Potter growing up, still loves Harry Potter, I'm kind of glad to be able to throw myself back into that world, especially now. But it's not just empty nostalgia, because they're doing something new with it, and that's nice.
Sure.
So that's going to be something that I actually think I'm excited for the community experience around that movie too, because I think that community is alive and well. And, to me, growing up was a very positive community around those books, because, whether you like them or not, J.K. Rowling wrote about some stuff that seems prescient now.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway.
This is kind of off topic of what we were just doing, but it just made me think about it. What are they going to call the sequel to that movie? Because when I watched the trailer in front of Doctor Strange, I realized that Harry Potter's nowhere in the title. And I just had this revelation of they've already talked about that they're going to make more of these. The title of this movie is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. How do you sequelize that?
I don't know.
Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them Again? Like, what clever...
Apparently they're going in kind of, not an anthology direction, because it sounds like the main characters will stay, but he's going to go to, like, different parts of the world. So this one is New York. The next one's going to be, I forget where they're saying it's going to be set, but it'll be a different kind of city in that era, which I think is a fun idea. So I don't know, maybe they'll... I don't know, because you can't really do the title-subtitle. It's too long.
Yeah, no, because the first thing is already kind of a title-subtitle.
Yeah.
And thinking of that and kind of pivoting off of the previous response I gave, I really like this, the idea of the porn version, the porn parody of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which in my head is, of course, called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Fuck Them, because that's a really good title.
They're going to have the fleshlight for that. Because they did it for Avatar, right? Where they had the alien fleshlight. So, you know the book in the Harry Potter movies that, like, it's the chomping book, the monster book of monsters?
Oh, God.
That's how they're going to do it.
I was just going to leave it at the title and leave the rest up to the audience's imagination. You don't have to go into detail.
Well, that's how they're going to do it.
It's disgusting.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Anyways, then I think that's probably what they're going to title the sequel. But
I am thankful for the entire ASMR community online because they helped me get through the day already with my crippling anxiety, but good God, are they going to be helpful to all of us going forward. Thank you for giving your time to breathe into a microphone heavily because, for whatever reason, it does calm us down.
What the fuck? You watch those things?
Oh, yeah.
What?
They're good people. They're nice people.
Nothing's wrong. No, they're good people. It's the people that listen to them are the bad people. Because that's fucking weird.
It's calming. It's nice. We can't judge here. However we're coping, okay?
I was going to be totally with you on that. There's like no judging, but ASMR videos were one of those things that like I always felt that only hypothetical people listened to, and that nobody actually listened to.
Some of the most popular channels on YouTube.
Yeah, but it's the same way that like PewDiePie is the most popular like Let's Player on YouTube. But in my mind, nobody actually watches PewDiePie videos because I've never met anyone that watches PewDiePie videos. So it's just all hypothetical.
Okay,
people.
What's something you're grateful for or whatever?
I'm grateful for Red Dead Redemption 2. I've been thinking about that a little bit because I've been kind of thinking about playing Red Dead Redemption 1 again, or at least dipping my toes in the water and, going back to a simpler time in America where you could just straight up murder someone. It's just like, hey, you know what? Sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need to just tie up some asshole and throw them on the train tracks. Some old West justice. You know what I'm saying.
Bandolier or no?
I'm gonna just do it like a bonus one. I'm also grateful for the bandolier, both the bandolier as it exists in real life, as it exists as a prop for Chewbacca in Star Wars, and as it existed as a very useful, helpful, and obvious item in Red Dead Redemption that doubled the ammo capacity for every weapon you had in the game that everyone clearly bought at the earliest opportunity.
I am grateful for the running gag that we still have somehow not retired on this show of me not using the bandolier, which I felt embarrassed about at one point, but now I'm really glad I did it because I think it's brought joy to many people.
Yeah. Okay.
You most of all.
Yes, yeah. Okay, like it's going off of thinking about running jokes on the podcast. I'm grateful for Ridley Scott and his insane determination to make a sequel to Prometheus that everyone knows is never going to get made because no one thinks it's a good idea, but he still keeps on saying that it's happening.
Yes, and by God, if it does get made, that will be a glorious day for this show.
Yeah.
We will bring our mic into the theater, tell everyone else to get out, and we will riff tracks that shit.
Fucking yes.
Yeah. That's basically how it's going to... Maybe we don't need to kick anyone out, though.
There's not going to be anyone else there. It's not really a concern. We just have to let, like, the usher know ahead of time not to get mad at us.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, I can't be grateful for movie theaters anymore because they suck.
Yeah.
But, I'm grateful for some movie theaters. I'm grateful that the Alamo Drafthouse exists, and I don't drink. I don't get pleasure out of that, but I'm glad so many people who are going to need it can go to the movies and get fucking wasted easily in the state of Colorado. It's great. It's great. And they're expanding all over the nation. That's going to be a great way to unwind in the months and years to come.
Okay, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
This is getting a lot harder.
We'll do a final couple ones, all right?
Okay. I am grateful, even if I have not had the opportunity to do it yet, I am grateful that the technology of virtual reality is becoming more of a possibility because it seems like it's going to become more of a necessity very quickly in the future.
I am grateful that pictures of people playing virtual reality keep coming out, because that's the funniest thing, is how fucking stupid people look when they play virtual reality.
Yes.
And with the amount so far we're not getting like jaded to it. It's still funny. And yes. I love that.
Yeah, like trailers for virtual reality games I'm very excited for.
Oh yeah.
Because I think it's just going to be the same thing. But then also I'm very grateful that the Marvel Studios is still putting out quality superhero movies and is moving forward kind of like in a way that's almost kind of frightening, the way that they... It seems like it's a statistical impossibility that all their movies, even though I've enjoyed basically every Marvel Studios movie, that they keep on making insane amount of money. But I really enjoyed Doctor Strange. I really enjoyed Civil War. And like it's something I can look forward to every year. Is a couple of good, fun superhero movies that it's a fun modern take on these characters I grew up loving as a kid.
I am forever grateful that they are committed to optimism.
Yes.
And that is part of their game plan, and that no matter how dark their not-to-be-named competitors get with their stupid fucking movies, yeah. I don't think the darkness is going to hit Marvel. I think they are committed to hope, and that's a good thing.
I am grateful for Superman. Not as he exists in the DC movieverse, but as he exists in my heart, and as he exists in the Superman the movie, and in my favorite Superman comic books. I am grateful for what he has done for me as a person.
I am grateful for Supergirl.
Yes.
The TV show on CBS, which I had to kind of like not think about for the last few days because that show is so purely associated with joy to me. But I am glad it is out there to give me that joy every Monday night, because I have not had a show that I approach with so much enthusiasm and such a smile on my face since maybe like the heyday of Chuck on NBC, which was such a fun show. And Supergirl just produces that same kind of joy. I think it's the best superhero thing anywhere being produced right now. It is such a wonderful show. This last week, Kara's sister Alex finally came out, and we knew she was gay because she was like hitting on her new partner. And I was like, I hope this isn't misdirection, because I want her to like realize this about herself, because she'll be so happy once she gets over the hump. And she started that process, and I got really happy for her. And then in this last week, there was also a scene where Kara was showing Mon-El, this new guy on the planet, around her office because she got him a job there. And Melissa Benoist, who plays Supergirl, her smile is the greatest thing in the world. Okay. And I hope she never loses it.
Okay.
There you go. That might be my last one, just because it's an explosion of joy.
Yeah, I am grateful that we can sit here and talk about bullshit on this podcast, that we can talk about superhero movies. We can talk about weird, obscure Japanese video games. We can talk about, Digimon stories, Cyber Sleuth to our heart's content. And that we have had that opportunity to be here and do that, and that we have lived in a country that we have been able to do that we have been free to do that and given the opportunity to do that. And I just hope that doesn't get fucked up in the future.
I am thankful you're here.
I'm
thankful we're friends. I'm thankful we can talk about this. I'm thankful for our listeners. And my only point with all of this is that there's an awful lot of things that Donald Trump cannot destroy, and we need to hold on to them more than ever.
Yes, it's not over yet. We need to hold on to what we have and fight for what we haven't gotten yet.